Hi, my name is Maria Fransen. I was part of Group 1 for the sixth semester project. This is my individual presentation about reflection of tooling and the project overall. I have chosen to adhere to the questions in the project formulation, and I will not be reading those out loud. So for challenges for the cloud provider, I have chosen four overall topics, and they're quite closely related. So the first one is interaction. How are the individual developers going to interact with the cloud provider, and how much knowledge about how this cloud provider functions are they required to have in order to deploy a project? It should be a very minimum amount of knowledge and a very easy interaction that they have to do in order to deploy, for example. Another one is abstraction, which really goes well with this. They have to do as much as possible, has to be abstracted away so that the individual developer has such an easy interaction with the cloud provider that they basically need to have no knowledge. And the third one is insights. Even though it's not optimal, code behaves differently locally and in the cloud. Perhaps sometimes because the traffic amount is very different. So there needs to be a lot of monitoring going on to see how the code behaves, if it behaves well and how you predict it, or if code snippets are taking up a lot of CPU usage more than expected, or you are seeing a lot of downtime, or similar. This should be mitigated with testing, but not all of it can you find, is my experience. And the last one is security, and this is more like a sense of security that when you do deployments to the cloud, that they will be successful. That you don't suddenly encounter edge catch with your cloud provider due to unforeseen circumstances. It should be easy, and you should have a real sense of security that it will go well. So this is the use of DevOps, cloud computing, and serverless computing. Our use of DevOps has been quite limited to continuous integration and continuous deployment, continuous delivery. And this is done basically through GitHub Actions, so that we ensure that new changes can be built and can be tested. Most of our tests are actually handheld, which is not optimal and should definitely be improved upon. We also don't have branch protection, meaning that you can push directly to master, and thus the continuous delivery are not really ensured by GitHub itself, which is quite a downside. But for cloud computing, I think cloud computing makes creating new projects, creating startups much more accessible, because you abstract away all the difficulties with infrastructure and platform, or can at least, so that the people who want to do a new project can focus on building the code, building the services. I think that's a huge upside. And for serverless is very smart for a new project, because you often don't know how much traffic you are going to have, and for new projects, the traffic is often gonna be close, or if not non-existent, which makes serverless great because it can scale to 0 instances. But if you do have a lot of traffic, or if you have very sporadic traffic, you can have latency on your website, for example, due to it being serverless. But you have to weigh the pros and cons, I guess. So I think the contribution my contribution was overall good, and I think the outcome was overall good. We implemented all of our requirements, and we had it deployed to the cloud. Matthias had a head start on some of the tooling and most of the tooling, but between deploying to the cloud and writing the reports and implementing our code base, I think our contribution was quite equal. And having this SDK G-Cloud for interacting with the cloud for deploying made deploying quite easy, and was definitely the best part about Google Cloud Platform. Otherwise, Google Cloud Platform and Google in general is quite well documented officially, which also makes it great for people who are new to the cloud and cloud computing. It would really be nice to have a GitHub workflow such that we perhaps didn't even need to use the SDK G-Cloud. So the overall process was quite chaotic, I think. It was quite different from the earlier SIP projects. And even though we knew that, I think we felt quite stressed when we came to the project weeks, and quite pressed that we had to do all of our requirements. I also think we were not quite sure what was expected of us, and that rested on our shoulders. We definitely, if I could go back, I definitely would have done a lot more research and analysis and design upfront in a more iterating way than we did. But I honestly also think that this was actually good practice for the final time, because due to the process being so chaotic, I now know on my own body like how having a bad project affects you and affects the project. So I would be much more careful with developing a project in the future, and I think actually that's good learning. That's it. Thank you for listening.